Hi, it's Juliet, and this video is a recap of everything I sewed in a week of holiday. I went at my mom's with my aunt for 7 days straight and it was awesome. I brought no suitcase because I expected to sew my own clothes there, so I started on day 1 with a t-shirt. Spoiler, I did end up wearing a lot of my mom's clothes, but the intention was there. As usual, my handmade patterns was not perfect, so the first t-shirt I made was too tight, this time on the forearms, so I had to cut them off. But then I made another one, first because I needed clothes, but also because I was adamant that I could sew myself a t-shirt without making modifications afterward. Plus, I buy my fabric in 3-meter slants, and I have a sustainable collection of those. By that I mean that I have way too much. It's piling up in my closet because I buy way faster than I can sew, so it's an underlying challenge of mine to be able to sew as much 3-meter lengths of fabric as I can. Every time I use one up, I'm like, yeah, one less hold item in my closet and more hand-sewed clothes for me. My aunt had told me to align the stripes with each other, so I tried matching patterns for the first time. It's not that complicated, but it does create more waste of fabric, so I could only make 3 pieces. The last one being a PJ that was unfortunately too tight. I'm still learning to adapt my patterns to different fabric. I did try to extend it with a triangle on the side. It did the trick for this week, but it still wasn't comfortable, so unfortunately I had to trail away at the end of the week. But at least it was useful for those 7 days without a suitcase. On day 2, I wanted to do something big that I had never done before. Tackle a real challenge, because it's the first time I have so much days in a row dedicated to sewing. And since my aunt was making a coat, I tried to use her pattern and follow along her process. I have made jacket before, and a puffer jacket, but I've never made a coat, nor the pockets that we were gonna make. So I decided to do a muslin first, which is the fact to sew the pattern in a fabric that you don't like to test out the fit of the pattern, and also to learn a bit how to assemble it, making the mistakes on the very cheap fabric and not on your official fabric that you want to make a coat out of. Me, I used some curtain that I had found in a thrift shop. It did the trick wonderfully. So I made the welt pocket for the first time, which is a pocket that is a bit more complicated than traditional pocket, but they also look way better, in my opinion. And it went well, it took me a couple hours, but I did figure out how to make it, obviously with many mistakes, but thankfully on a very cheap fabric. The coat pattern, I ended up not really liking it, which makes sense because I did not choose that. It was a pretty coat, it's just it wasn't my taste. What I didn't like about it is, first of all, the belt behind. The fact that it's a bit too oversized, there's too much fabric in the back and it makes folds. And also, more importantly, I could not raise my arms. Because it's a very tight coat on the sleeve, like on top of the sleeve, and the back is very tight, so it's uncomfortable to me. Especially because I want to wear it going to my job, so biking, and I need to be able to have my arms up to do that. I didn't like the end of the sleeve, the fact that there is 2 mini belts for the sleeves, and I didn't like the collar, because I thought it was too small. So I modified the whole pattern. Day 3 was a comfy, rainy day, and I sewed a whole coat from the modified pattern. For it, I used some cheap fabric that I had laying around, but then that afternoon we went shopping with my aunt at the shop that we always go with my mom, and I was amused to find some fabric suspiciously similar to the fabric I was using at the moment. It was the same, it was just the same, I had bought it there, and I looked at the price, and I was remembered that this wasn't a cheap fabric at all. I had got it on sale, so I bought it for less than that, but still, it wasn't $5 or something. Thankfully, the coat was going okay, so at least the fabric was used for a complete project, not like the unfinished purple curtain I had used the day before. I went back home and I finished carefully this coat. The welt pocket went fine, and I finished the coat. And I didn't like it. At least it wasn't uncomfortable to wear. I had fixed the sleeves and the back problem correctly. I do like the lining, and it's not that I think it's ugly, but it's just not my style. I like fitted clothes, and this coat was a bit too oversized for me. I didn't put any buttons on because I didn't want to use my pretty buttons. I have way too much of those and I should really use them, but I didn't want to. Also in the back, I had messed up the lining definitely because I was inventing it pretty much. It was not like that on the original pattern, and I think I made it too small because it was kind of dragging the coat away, like wasn't letting it flow correctly. Plus, I like a hood on the coat and this one had none. I figured that I could continue adjusting this pattern over and over, but I think just the base is not my style, and this is as much as I can accomplish from this pattern. So I did not adjust the pattern again, I just moved on. I moved on to day 4, very motivated. I had fallen asleep daydreaming about having an amazing day the next day, having a great coat and be able to say, I figured it out, I have the perfect coat pattern. So I started from scratch making a new muslin, this time not based on the original pattern. I created 11 pattern pieces and then I sewed another fabric that I had bought at a thrift shop. This time it was a bright yellow tablecloth. When I'm at a thrift shop, I always try to pick those up in case I want to sew muslins, because I always end up making my own patterns, and for that you really do need several muslins. So I sewed the base of the coat and I was quite convinced by it. This coat was great in my opinion, and I was overjoyed to see that my pattern was assembling correctly. Obviously I had to correct many little details sewing the muslin, but overall I was pleased with the result and eager to start the real coat tomorrow. Before the end of the day, I cut up the fabric for this future wool coat. On day 5, I sewed the coat base. Then I realized I had not yet made the sleeves in my pattern, and I didn't want to copy the previous ones from the previous coat because I didn't really like them. So I made some new ones from scratch with the muslin fabric. I verified that it fitted the coat by pinning it together. It gave it a weird funny look, and it did confirm that the sleeves were correct. I continued sewing the coat for hours after that until night, where I stopped with all the outside of the coat done and the lining for the hood attached. Day 6 was spent sewing the lining itself and then attaching everything together, making sure to take care of all the little details, like the top stitch around everything, cuffs for the sleeves, etc. I finished the coat, which was a success but also not totally. I had to skip the pockets, which takes a long time, in order to finish, and I discovered at the end that the lining wasn't well designed because it does the same thing that the previous lining did to the previous coat. Not at the same place, this time it's under the sleeves, but it does drag away the coat and it doesn't let him fall correctly, kind of creating folds, which is a bummer because otherwise I do really like the coat. I like how it's tighter than the previous coat, how it fits me. I like the length of it, the fact that it has a hood and the lining. I like how the hoods fit because I did remake that several times. And I do also like how it looks when it's closed. I didn't put buttons on it because once again, well, I'm holding my buttons, but on top of that, it doesn't fall correctly, so I don't want to waste button on something that isn't perfect. So I'm gonna leave it like that. I have been wearing it a couple times since I made it, so at least it's not a waste. And I also wore the other one. So I made coats that I'm wearing, it's just it is still a learning process. I didn't get my perfect coat yet, but one day I will. Day 7 arrived too fast. I would have liked this holiday to be twice as long. But at last, this was the last day, and I only had the morning to sew because I was going to wedding the afternoon. I had sewn a dress for that previously, in a very thin fabric, and turns out I had a not risky at all idea in the morning of the wedding to not wear that. Because my mom had told me I was going to be cold given the weather. Cue the rush of sewing a new dress in a thicker fabric. It took me 3 hours, but I did make it work. I used a floral, really pretty fabric that is way thicker, way warmer. It's kind of a sweatshirt fabric inside, which is pretty cool. And I made the whole dress, which I do like. The only thing I don't like is the fact that I didn't sort of lining the sleeves. So there's whites popping up. On the previous dress that I made, the fabric was two-sided, the print on it. So it didn't create a problem at all. But for this one, the fabric wasn't. So it's my only little regret. I wish I had lined that. But otherwise, I'm very happy with the dress. I think it fits correctly. I even got someone at the wedding, I don't know, to say that I looked good in that dress, which was very sweet. So I was happy about it. And this was the end of my 7 days holiday of sewing. In a sense, I didn't sew a ton of stuff. I sewed a short sleeve t-shirt, a long sleeve t-shirt, and the bottom PJ I threw away. The first muslin, the second muslin don't count. So then there is the black coat, the grey coat, and that dress. But that's it. Yet I did feel like it was a great success because first of all, I learned a ton, and second of all, I have a new pattern. It's in an in-progress pattern. It's not finished, but it's a good base for a coat. So I am very happy about that. It's hard to find, and I'm happy I just have my own, so it has the potential to be perfect in my eyes compared to buying a pattern where it's just, well, it's the taste of someone else, really. So I'm really happy about my 5 pieces of clothes in 7 days. And I had a blast sewing with my mom and my aunt, so I'm mostly happy about that. Bye!